Hey.
Hello and welcome to the Be Mobile live show. It is Alicia and Ollie, and we are two of the physios here at Be Mobile. If you are looking for advice when it comes to health and fitness for adults 55 plus, you have come to the right place.
Absolutely, Alicia. Good to have you here, and today we will be discussing some of the impacts that resistance training can have on your cardiovascular system, and we'll be holding that up against a better known form of training that's good for your heart, and that's aerobic
exercise. So we're going to be looking at which is better for your heart, strength training or aerobic exercise.
Yeah. Now, speaking of your heart, I've got a little heartfelt story here, Alicia. I heard about this guy the other day, and he was sitting at home just enjoying himself, watching some TV, and he heard this knock on the door. And he goes to the door and opens it, and there's a snail sitting there.
A snail?
So he thinks, what's this snail doing? So he picks it up and he throws the snail as far as he can, right?
Whoa.
And he goes and sits back down. Anyway, a couple of years later, he's sitting down there again in his living room, and he hears another knock at the door. And he goes and opens the door, and there's a snail again.
Yeah, the snail's back.
Says, what was that about?
Oh dear, that was a heartwarming story, Ollie.
Poor snail. I mean, he was lucky to survive it, really.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway.
Okay, anyway.
That's, if you're just joining us for the first time, that's a taste of the quality of the humour that we bring to these live shows. But definitely hang around for the education, because that bit's actually quite good.
It only gets better.
It only gets
better from here.
Only gets better.
So we have a few Be Mobile announcements. First of all, welcome to all of our new 8-week Fit and Strong participants. We're really excited to have you here, and we can't wait to hear what you think about the program.
And also, we've got some people who were with us in the past doing the 8-week Fit and Strong program or the membership, and they're rejoining us, restarting the exercise journey. That's always great to see, because as we know, it is easy to fall off the bandwagon, but good to see people jumping back on again and doing something positive for their health. So welcome everyone to the Be Mobile community. All right, now let's get into it. First of all, we want to share a couple of stats with you. Statistic number one, I'm going to read this one out because I think it's important. Adults who participate in resistance training have a 15% lower risk of all-cause mortality and a 17% lower risk of cardiovascular disease compared with people who do no resistance training. So a 15% lower risk of dying of any cause just by doing resistance training, which I think is huge.
Which is a big effect, isn't it?
It is. Now, unfortunately, Alicia, only 4 in 10 Australian adults meet the recommended guidelines for resistance training. That's 2 strength resistance training sessions each week. So here at Be Mobile, we want to drive those numbers up, because as you're about to discover, it's really important for your health.
Yeah, and I think statistic number 3 elaborates on that. Approximately 30 to 60 minutes per week of resistance training is associated with the maximum risk reduction for all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease. So it's not a lot. It's only 30 to 60 minutes a week, and it has the maximum impact that you would hope it does.
Yeah, it's the old 80-20 rule, isn't it? You get 80% of the impact from 20% of the effort, and 30 to 60 minutes a week, it's not much, especially when you consider that you can break that down into little bite-sized amounts. You might do 10 minutes of resistance training here, 10 minutes there, all of a sudden you've accumulated that 30 to 60 minute number. Now, resistance training, just so we're all on the same page, resistance training, strength training, basically anything where you're exerting your muscles against a resistance. So you might be lifting weights, you might be using a resistance band, machines at the gym, you could be doing some using your body weight as resistance.
Body weight as well.
Sit to stands, push-ups on the kitchen bench, all these sorts of activities, that's what we are including. And when we talk about cardiovascular disease or cardiovascular health, we're talking about your circulatory system. So your heart, your blood vessels.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course cardiovascular disease encompasses anything affecting those. So coronary heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, things like strokes.
Peripheral vascular disease.
Peripheral vascular disease. So we're throwing this all in, and we're talking about that. Now, we're going to start by going into some of the ways in which resistance training reduces the risks of cardiovascular disease. And the first one of those, Alicia, is your blood pressure, which is an important marker of your health.
It is indeed. So resistance training can reduce resting blood pressure in healthy adults and also in those with pre-hypertension, hypertension, and an elevated cardiometabolic risk. So we might bring up this diagram we have here of artery walls, because the way resistance training causes this effect is by changing the endothelial function. So as you can see on that diagram, the endothelium is the layer of tissue that lines the blood vessels. So a healthy endothelium allows for good vasodilation and constriction, so the expansion and contraction of blood vessels, and resistance training is really good for that.
Yeah, so you can think about whenever you engage in some form of exercise, the heart is pumping blood to get oxygen and nutrients to the working muscles.
Yeah.
So there's more blood going through the blood vessels, and healthy blood vessels will respond by dilating in response to that. Now, a lot of people get confused by this. They think, well, resistance training increases your blood pressure at the time, which it does. We see studies showing that you can get spikes in your blood pressure when doing resistance training up to, 400 millimeters of mercury, where the healthy, a standard resting blood pressure is 120 on 80.
Yes.
But those transient increases in your blood pressure are much different to a chronically elevated blood pressure.
So they're the short-term effects on your blood vessels, but the long-term effects of, like Ollie said, of having the blood rushing through your vessels to get oxygen to your muscles allows the vessels to expand and contract so they're more pliable, and the arteries are not as stiff, because arterial stiffness, when your blood vessels are very rigid and stiff, is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease.
That's right. And if you look at that image there, that sort of that cross section there is showing as well that we've got muscle in our blood vessels, smooth muscle, and that actually responds to exercise in a similar way to our skeletal muscle. So like our biceps get bigger and stronger in response to lifting weights, the muscles in our blood vessels get better at expanding and contracting, as you said there, Alicia, becoming more pliable. Okay, now the other thing to note there, by making our endothelium, or that inner lining of our blood vessels, healthier, it reduces the risks of plaques forming, and that reduces the risk of clotting, which is obviously a really important thing when we consider our cardiovascular health. Now,
indeed,
Alicia, I am always my mind is bottled up when I consider this statistic. The evidence that we have at the moment shows that exercise and resistance training included in that is really powerful for reducing your blood pressure. In fact, resistance training on its own can have a similar impact on reducing your resting blood pressure to blood pressure reducing medications.
Yeah.
So that's already great news, but you can see how excited I am about this, Alicia. Layer onto that aerobic training as well, so cardiovascular exercise like jogging, walking, these sorts of things, and you can actually outperform antihypertensive medication with just exercise.
Wow.
Okay. Now, of course, if you've got blood pressure issues, talk to your doctor, but that's just a little pearl for you to think about.
It is fascinating, and it shows how potent the effect of resistance training can be, and especially when combined with aerobic exercise. So, okay, so we know that resistance training can affect your blood pressure in a positive way. It can also affect your blood glucose levels in a positive way. So we're looking at improvements in glycemia, which is the official name for blood sugar levels, and insulin resistance. So resistance training improves your insulin sensitivity. So this means that muscles respond better to the hormone insulin. So insulin's what, I guess, helps to clean up the sugar in your blood when you have an elevated blood glucose level. Insulin, which is released by the pancreas, comes in and it helps shuttle that blood sugar into your muscles and reduce the levels in your blood. Absolutely. I think you summed it up there. And it's important to recognise that if you're a regular participator in resistance training, we actually see a 17% lower incidence of diabetes compared with people who do no resistance training, of course. Now, I think most people are familiar with the link between your blood sugar and diabetes. So that's what we're talking about here. Resistance training helps to manage your blood sugar levels and reduce risk of elevated blood sugar, which is not a good thing for your cardiovascular system. Now, speaking of
keeping things down. Resistance training can also reduce your blood lipid profile. Now, lipids, there we're talking about fats in the blood. Okay, so resistance training, it has a modest effect on things like your total cholesterol, your triglycerides, and low density lipoproteins for most people, except for, and I think this is important, except for older adults who have elevated risk of cardiovascular disease. In those people, resistance training has a much more marked impact on reducing those risk factors. So if you're someone who's, let's say you're 60, you've been to the doctor, you've got high cholesterol, maybe you're on a statin, definitely something worth considering, certainly having a conversation with your doctor around getting started with exercise. I mean, even just going out for some walking, doing some resistance training, it's going to have a really positive effect on your health.
And I think it's an interesting point that you make there, Ollie, because the people that are most at risk of these cardiometabolic diseases are the ones who can benefit the most from strength training and also aerobic training. But then they're probably the people that are most apprehensive or worried that engaging in activity might be harmful to them if they're already vulnerable. But as you said, number one, of course, but get checked out by your doctor. But strength training and aerobic training are very safe exercises, and particularly when you start out at a very small and manageable level.
Yeah, 100%, Alicia. Now, we've got a few people saying hello. Carmel, hello, from Bendigo. Debbie, from not so sunny, actually really cold Yass. Yeah, I can imagine.
Okay.
I reckon today in Sydney was freezing, so I'd hate to be in Yass. And Sarah says hello, and hello, Ollie and Alicia from marvellous Melbourne.
Hello.
Good alliteration.
What's the weather like in Melbourne?
Must be cold.
Must be cold, because we're feeling it here in Sydney today.
Now, Alicia, cardiovascular issues and elevated risk factors like cholesterol is a very common issue. So if you are watching this and you have an experience with cardiovascular disease and exercise, perhaps some concern around getting started with exercise, let us know in the comments. We'd love to get some discussion going, and we will be getting to some Q&A in just a moment's time. But one of the final factors we're going to talk about here today, Alicia, around the benefit of resistance training for your cardiovascular system is your body composition, okay?
It is indeed. So, as you well might imagine, resistance training is indeed very good for your body composition. So, it reduces your fat stores, and it also increases your muscle mass, or at least helps you to maintain your muscle mass. So, it also increases your resting metabolic rate, and it may attenuate weight gain over time. We know that those that are engaged in physical activity are more likely to maintain a healthy weight.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to touch on. When we talk about weight loss and weight management, I think the key factor is your diet, okay? Making sure you're not consuming lots of excess energy. But then if you've lost weight, we see a lot in the research that if you're active and you're exercising, that can help you to keep the weight off. So that's really important.
Yeah.
Now,
all right, so now we're getting towards the answering our question.
Yes, we're going to shortly compare resistance training and aerobic or cardiovascular training in terms of its impact on cardiovascular disease risk. So I'm going to pull up a little graph here, or a big graph really, because it's going to take up most of the screen. So what we can see here, two columns. So we've got on the right hand, is that on the right hand side of your screen, Brody? Anyway, in the green, we've got the percentage of people who are aerobically active that participate in resistance training. So 43% of those people engage in resistance training as well.
Very interesting.
Which is
almost
good.
half.
Almost half
of those that get out, do whatever form of cardio exercise, half of those people are also doing resistance training.
Now, if you look at that other side of the graph, the red, which I thought it was an ominous colour to use, people who don't do any aerobic activity, what we call sedentary people, they're much less likely to be engaging in resistance training, okay? 3.6% of sedentary people engage in resistance training. So we want to bump those numbers up because, as we'll see, it is very, very powerful. Now, the good news is if you're sedentary, so if you're someone in that red bar there, which I'm sure no one is watching this because you're watching the Be Mobile show and you know all about the impact of exercise. If you're sedentary, you can actually still have a big impact on your cardiovascular disease risk by just doing some resistance training. And that could be really simple, Alicia, as we said. Could be doing 10 minutes worth of some sit to stand, some kitchen bench push-ups, following along with even a free workout on our free Be Mobile platform, and doing that a few times a week. You could see an 18 to 29% reduction in your cardiovascular disease risk. All right.
Absolutely. And like we mentioned earlier, like you said, just a 10-minute workout,
Yep.
you do that 3 times a week, there's your 30 minutes, and that's going to result in a reduction in the risk of these diseases.
Very easy to do. Small
Yep.
amount, big result. Now, I think it's very common to think, well, aerobic exercise, cardiovascular exercise like jogging or swimming, those sorts of things are really good for your heart. Now, they are for sure. But when you look at the research, it's actually pretty similar, the impact between resistance training and cardiovascular exercise.
On your heart health.
On your heart
Yeah,
health. It's
yeah.
similar. 18 to 29% is what's often reported in the literature. But Alicia, what's really interesting is what happens when you combine the two.
It is indeed. Yeah, so 18 to 29% for just aerobic training and the same for resistance training. But when you combine both of them, a 40 to 46% reduction. So almost like a reduction in half.
A massive.
Nearly 50%.
Massive
so
impact.
Huge.
Yeah, and that is really across lots of different populations. So whether you're quite fit and healthy, all right, or if you're, as we said, older and you have some cardiovascular risk factors, just doing a bit of both is going to have a big impact on your health. So that's really something to work towards. If you're not doing any at the moment, you can start really small. Jump onto our YouTube channel or go and sign up for a free account on our platform. Or if you're already joining us, log in and do an 8-week Fit and Strong or one of your membership workouts and get started with some exercise.
Indeed, and obviously, you know, the statistics show that the ideal is to do both, doing some cardio and also some resistance training. But you know, if you can also take heart by the fact that whatever you do, if you only, you know, you just say you really like doing cardio exercise, and just by doing that, you're going to benefit. If you only want to do strength training, you're going to benefit from that too. At the end of the day, whatever type of physical activity you do, you're going to benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Alicia,
Yes.
what's really positive, we're already seeing some people taking our word for this. Deborah says hi from on top of a mountain in Kew, New South Wales.
Wow.
Deborah's
Huge.
walked up there in the last few minutes, I imagine, from listening to this, so she's already benefiting. A lot of rain and damp around in New South Wales at the moment. It's raining in South Coast, Gympie. Hi from sunny Ballarat, says Beryl.
Oh, okay. It's
Maybe the
sunny
only
in Ballarat.
place.
That's
Yeah.
where we need to get down into Victoria.
Yeah, and then in answer to your question, Alicia, Pam says it's sunny in Melbourne, but very icy, as you'd
I
expect
bet.
down south
Okay.
there. All right, now we are at the point where we are going to answer some questions from our lovely community. So if you have a question, pop it in the comments, we'll get to it, but we've got some pre-prepared ones here that we are going to start with. The first one is from Chris, who says, "Hi guys, I've just been diagnosed with osteoporosis in my wrists. I'm 75 and like to know how to strengthen my wrists." Now, let's just clarify. There's two very similar sounding terms, osteoporosis, which is a reduction in bone mineral density, and osteoarthritis, which is an issue that causes pain and inflammation around the joints. Not sure which one you're talking about here, Chris, but we will address both, so we have you covered. So if you've got osteoporosis in your wrists, first line treatment, we really want to get you doing some resistance training. We want to challenge your bones by loading them, just like we do with the muscles, okay? So that's going to involve a range of different exercises, but of course some upper body exercises. There's good research showing that you can improve your bone mineral density no matter what stage you're at with things like overhead presses, deadlifts, rows, all these sorts of exercises that load up your bones and cause the muscles to pull on the bones, and that results in a stimulus causing the bones to get stronger and more dense.
That's right, and it's also very safe.
Yep.
So I imagine a lot of, or I don't imagine, a lot of people with osteoporosis do say to us that they're concerned about weight training because they perceive that that's potentially going to be harmful. We know from the research that loading the bones in the manner that Ollie described is actually really good for your bone density. So very safe to start loading your upper body and using your wrists. Now, if you did actually mean osteoarthritis and you're having pain with exercises that involve your wrists, it's about trying to find tolerable exercises. So often people with wrist pain might find push-ups difficult. So I'm just going to grab a pair of dumbbells and show you a way we could modify that.
Yep, for sure.
So we can use dumbbells like this. I'm just going to move my computer out of the way. Yep, and we can put them like this, so I'm not having to get into a lot of wrist extension, which can often be uncomfortable, and I can do a push-up in this manner, and I'm not feeling that my wrist is in that extreme range of motion that can be painful.
Because you can keep it in a nice straight position.
Exactly,
on your
a more
handle
neutral position for my wrist.
Yeah.
And, yes.
So we're looking at ways to do resistance training in a manageable way. On top of that, I would say we want to build up the strength in your gripping muscles. Okay.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, things like opening jars, I don't know, using a nutcracker, whatever it is, if you're weak, all of a sudden that pain becomes more of a problem. But if you can build up some strength, those tasks become easier, and I would imagine you experience less symptoms as a result of that. So we want to be doing exercise that challenge the grip. So things like holds. So take some dumbbells, for example, and just do some holds for 30 to 60 seconds. Anything where you're holding onto a weight or squeezing, like even getting a towel and doing 20 squeezes of the towel. These are all good ways of just challenging those muscles and building up some grip strength.
Yeah, we actually have a very good video that is all about increasing your grip strength. So, Brodie, if you can look that one up, we might post that in the comments.
Wonderful. Okay. Question 2 here from Pam.
Question 2 from Pam. I'd like to be able to increase the weight on the overhead press movement. I've been stuck on the same weight for ages. So, Pam.
Yeah.
Ollie, how does Pam get stronger at her overhead press? How does she start lifting more weight overhead?
Pam, I hate to say, but I've been in your shoes many times.
Losing
sleep at night. How do I get stronger at this particular exercise? Now, it's not always an exact science, but basically what we conclude is what you've been doing hasn't been enough. Okay, so we're going to have to mix something up. Now, the first step is always to increase what we call the volume of your strength training. In other words, how much you're doing, how many repetitions, how much load you're lifting. So I would start by adding an extra set or two after a few weeks, because that is basically just increasing the stimulus, and hopefully that's going to be enough to cause your muscles to get stronger. Now, the second thing I would be doing, if that fails, is to reduce the number of repetitions that you're doing so that you can handle more weight, and ideally you're going to get stronger as a result of doing heavier weights. Those would be my 2 suggestions, Alicia.
I like those, and I think the overhead press is it can be a notoriously difficult exercise to increase the weight you're lifting, can't it? Because the smaller muscles compared to all the muscle mass we're using in our legs when we do deadlifts and squats. But I totally agree with you, Ollie. If it's something you really want to target, Pam, you're going to have to devote more time to doing that movement in the ways Ollie described. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So
Number
now
3
we
here.
have Claire. Claire says, hi Be Mobile Physios. Can you give any advice about using vibrating platforms for osteoporosis prevention or treatment and for more general health added to normal weekly program? Are there unacceptable risks? I am specifically looking to improve my femur bone mineral density. So we're talking about the top of our hip there.
Okay, we've had a quick look at the research in this area, Claire, and in short, we wouldn't be devoting a whole lot of your time and valuable energy towards this vibration treatment for your bone mineral density. There is some evidence showing that it can improve your leg muscle strength, and it's quite safe, but I think it's probably what I would describe as majoring in the minors. You're probably getting a small impact for, a lot of time and effort, where you could get a lot more from devoting that time and energy to resistance training, which we know has known positive effects not only for your bone density but for your strength, and as we just discussed today, your cardiovascular health and lots of other things. So that's what I would be focusing on rather than putting a lot of time and energy into the vibration treatment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Alicia, or is that
No.
sum up your thoughts as well?
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Ditto.
But that's it. If you have a vibration platform at home and you don't have to spend any money and you enjoy it and you're already doing all your resistance training, then go for it. It seems to be quite safe and might provide some small additional benefits. Question 4 here is from Deb, who says, are there any recommendations about how much balance exercise should be done in a week? I think I heard Ollie say during one of the balance workouts that we should be doing balance work every day, which was a surprise to me, but maybe it shouldn't have been. Yes, that certainly sounds like something I would say, doing some balance work every day. Now, there is some research in this area basically showing that the more balance training you do, the bigger impact it's going to have on your balance, basically. So really, we want to be aiming for, if you're someone that really wants to focus on your balance, 1 to 2 hours a week of balance training, but that's going to include all your, what we call functional strength training. So anything where you're having to maintain a upright position like squats or deadlifts, these sorts of things. Okay?
Yeah, so don't forget those exercises are helping with your balance because you're improving the strength of your musculoskeletal system, which is a big part of what helps you maintain your balance. And the other thing is that when you're doing balance-specific exercises, you want them to be challenging. So you're only going to benefit from doing balance exercises if you're reaching the point where you are actually losing your balance and then being able to correct yourself to a normal standing position. Yeah,
so we want to make sure that it's challenging.
Yeah,
too.
it has to be challenging.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
couple of good little comments here. Tina says, there's a hole in the market for a formed hand grip on a dumbbell that spreads the hand load like crutches do. So those of us with thumb osteoarthritis can do a push-up. Dumbbell is still too much pressure in one spot. Yeah, that is a good point, Tina. We'll have to get...
Fat grips, which could help.
Yeah, Brody makes a good point.
It's not hand form.
There is this product here that we use as a little thing to protect the skirting board. These are fat grips. We have no affiliation with them, but they are just a rubber grip that can make it a little bit more comfortable. By popping those on the dumbbell, you can see it's a softer, wider grip and can make it a little bit more manageable. But you can get a similar effect from rolling up a towel.
A towel, yep.
I'm trying to think of something else, or like a foam mat wrapped around a dumbbell that might take a bit of the load off as well. So a couple of things to try there, Tina.
Maybe.
A
You
sponge,
could use
yeah.
a big sponge, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, remember, even if you can't work out something there, Tina, just leaving out those exercises that are really too painful for you and just focusing on the others instead, you're still going to get lots of good benefits. Now, what are some other ones here? Robin Marie says, I feel that my middle misses out on toning exercise. My core, any tips? Yeah, so a lot of people think that you need to tone your abdominal muscles, unlike other muscles in the body, but that's not the case. We just want to train them as though they are any other muscle so we can build some strength, and that's going to be useful. So any exercise that challenges the trunk muscles, so big movement like squats and deadlifts and push-ups, they're all really good, but of course we can do some specific abdominal work like planks and crunches. These sorts of activities are really useful too. But if you go onto the Be Mobile YouTube channel and search for abdominal exercises, you will find a plethora of different ones that you can try out and experiment, challenge yourself with.
There is indeed. And I think, like you said, Ollie, it's important to remember that even in exercises that you wouldn't consider a specific abdominal exercise like squats and deadlifts, you're very much using and engaging your abdominals to do them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Alicia, I'm going to ask for your help. Helen asks, could I please ask for you to demonstrate an overhead press? I think that I seem to use my neck muscles as they are the muscles that give me grief. Okay, so first of all, let's do the overhead press. Just keep going back there, Alicia. Keep going. Beautiful. And then we'll talk about your neck muscles, Helen. So starting at the earlobes, pressing the weights up over your head, okay, and just turn side on so we can all see, Alicia. So ideally, they are going straight up over your head till you have straight arms. Now, this can challenge the muscles in the neck, and if you've got some neck pain, this can be problematic. Now, it's probably not because you're doing it wrong. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just that it might be too much for you at the moment. So the first thing we would suggest is doing a lighter weight, okay? And if that still doesn't help, and even just doing it with just your hands can cause trouble for your neck, what we would do is get a chair, as we often show in the workouts, lean right back in the chair. Imagine I've got a backrest here, and then pressing up like that. That's gonna make it a little bit easier on those muscles in your neck and bring some of the load forward to the front of your shoulders and your chest muscles. That can sometimes help for people with neck symptoms. So that's what I'd be trying there, Helen.
And I think even if possible, when you're leaning back, if you could be doing that on a couch or something and potentially putting on the top of the chair a cushion, if you can have a little bit of head support as well, I think that will also potentially help relieve that neck pain until you can work up to a point where you've got some more strength and resilience and you can try the overhead press again.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, just talking about the grips for the dumbbells, says maybe a piece of a pool noodle might work. Great tip, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, good.
And we got one more little one here from Makir, who says, Mikiri, sorry if I haven't got that pronunciation correct, hip exercises for osteoarthritis. Yeah, so there's lots of different exercises you could do. We would suggest going to the YouTube channel and searching for it. Brody's going to put a video for you to get started with.
We have a great video and with lots of information about hip OA and also some great exercises. But I think the key thing to remember is there's no one specific exercise that's going to be the best. It's good to do a whole variety of exercises that are going to strengthen the structures around your hip.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, on that note, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of good videos and we're posting lots of new stuff there regularly. So make sure you go sign up. Well, not sign up, just subscribe. It's very easy. One click and you're in. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up there, Alicia. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next Wednesday on the Be Mobile Show.
See you.